Hey guys, today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Why Does the Netherlands Have a Creepy Circular Island? So this is a very evocative title and I have no idea what it could be. So let's check it out. Okay, that's how you find out that there's a circular island, because of a drone? Makes sense, because you're only going to see it from the above.
What on earth is this?
Oh my god, it's very blue. I love it. It's gorgeous. This actually looks like a movie. What is this? That boat is, and well, it's not a boat, it's like a ship. It's so big. Oh, is that the island?
With the passing of time and the erosion that comes with it, islands can form some pretty interesting shapes. You've got a fish in Croatia, you've got a seahorse in Ecuador, you've got a heart in the Maldives, you've even got a smiley face in Malaysia. But have you ever seen an island in the shape of a creepy robot's eye? No? Well, now you have, and there's no way of unseeing it. Do it sees you. It always sees you.
It's very particular.
But rest assured, this bizarre island in the Netherlands is not the creation of erosion or natural processes, or aliens, as you might have guessed if you have a brain. This is Ketelmeer, a boundary lake which skirts around the edge of Flevopolder, a monumental man-made island in the middle of the Netherlands. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the creation of Flevopolder, as I talked about the region in my previous video. Shameless plug here if you want to learn a bit more how the Dutch did this. But basically, this whole area used to be a big salty bay called Zuiderzee until they dammed off the top of it in the 1920s and turned it into a gigantic freshwater lake called IJsselmeer. They then built a massive island in IJsselmeer called Flevopolder with a little ring of water retained around the outside before damming off parts of that too, creating a series of so-called border lakes, one of which is Ketelmeer. And this is just a fragment of the larger Zuiderzee works, a wonderland of artificial islands, lakes and rivers, and one of the 7 wonders of the modern world, along with the CN Tower, which shouldn't be in there because it's just a tall building. Fight me in the comments.
But one big problem with the creation of the Zuiderzee is that there was now no longer a steady flow of water from the Netherlands' billion trillion rivers into the North Sea, and thus all the fresh water that came through these rivers was just emptied into Ketelmeer and IJsselmeer, along with whatever toxic sludge might have been in that water.
By far the largest river feeding the lake is the IJssel, and yes, before you point it out, I know it's weird as hell that the IJssel and IJsselmeer have 2 capital letters at the start of their names. It's because the I sound, formed by I and J in this context in the Dutch language, are considered a single phoneme or sound when placed together, and when written down they are often smushed into one character called a digraph, and either capitalized or uncapitalized together.
If you're a linguistics nerd, you might be screaming at your computer, but Gabe, other digraphs aren't capitalized in that fashion. To which I say, you do realize you're talking about the Netherlands, right? The country that has a city whose name begins with an apostrophe, and who has a town called Hungry Wolf. That Netherlands, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, I was just checking. But yeah, the IJssel is the largest river feeding IJsselmeer, but before that it has to go through Ketelmeer, which is here. And with that, we're back to where we were a few minutes ago.
This is a beautiful place.
The IJssel snakes its way through central Netherlands, starting at the major city Arnhem before passing through the towns of Zutphen, Deventer and Zwolle before emptying into IJsselmeer. And for more than a century, the IJssel was thus the proud recipient of all the toxic sludge containing mercury, cadmium and zinc from factories and smelters in these towns, particularly in the decades following the Second World War. This initially all floated downstream and ended up in IJsselmeer until the Flevopolder and all its little border lakes were created in the 1950s and 60s, bottlenecking the flow of all of this toxic sludge into the tiny Ketelmeer border lake, creating a layer of sludge about 50 centimeters or 1.5 foot deep across the entire lake bed.
That's gross.
But with the Netherlands being a key member of the European Union, in the 90s, the long arm of Brussels reached over into the Netherlands to wag a finger in the face of the Dutch, telling them to clean up the water in Ketelmeer and the IJssel in order to fall in line with EU environmental regulations and to stop the groundwater from becoming contaminated with toxic sludge.
Yes.
And in typical Dutch fashion, the Rijkswaterstaat, the government body that deals with water management, rolled up its sleeves and went, "Yes, another chance to massively over-engineer a solution," and got to work. The plan was always to dredge up the toxic silt from the bottom of the lake. But then what? Well, placing it on land was ruled out almost immediately. Not only would that almost certainly be met with massive pushback from the residents of wherever it ended up, but would also present a larger risk of leakage, which could contaminate the ground and cause a major headache further down the line. And as much as they would have loved to fire this waste into the sun, the laws of physics dictated that they had to choose a third option.
It's not
in the early 90s, it was decided that all of the toxic sludge would effectively just be funneled into a big artificial island. that would work as a sort of storage container, separating it from the rest of the lake by a series of 10-meter high dikes.
Oh my god, that's
By
crazy.
1996, construction was underway, and by 1999, the project was complete. This is IJsselhoog, said artificial island in the middle of Ketelmeer, which contains its own extremely aesthetically pleasing circular lake in the middle.
Yeah, but it's
IJsselhoog
toxic.
technically translates to the Eye of the IJssel, which is a cool name already, but it's quite clever because oog is also the Old Dutch word for island, so it's also the island of the IJssel. Meanwhile, Google completely misses the mark and incorrectly translates it to ice cream eye. So if any Dutch viewers are watching, can you tell me how they've come to that conclusion? Because I couldn't figure it out. The lake in the middle is not connected to the rest of Ketelmeer. Instead, it's basically a well where all the sludge from Ketelmeer and elsewhere in the Netherlands can be stored, and it's absolutely gigantic. It has a capacity of 23 million cubic meters of waste, has a diameter of a kilometer,
seems like a lot.
and boasts a depth of 50 meters or 165 feet.
Oh my god,
To give you
okay,
a sense
that's
of the
deep.
scale of this project, the surrounding lake has an average depth of just 3 meters or 10 feet. Along with Dutch dredging firm Boskalis Westminster, the Rijkswaterstaat started dredging up the toxic silt from the lake bed and into the tank at IJsselhoog in the year 2000. 2/3 of the space is intended for Ketelmeer sludge, with the final third being for sludge elsewhere in the Netherlands. And in 2016, private companies were given permission to apply to deposit their own toxic sludge on the island. Articles from the year
Okay.
2000 suggest that the process would be completed within about 20 years, but it hasn't quite worked like that.
Ketelmeer is
Why?
now clean, which is amazing in its own right, and sludge
Yeah.
is still being brought in from other parts of the country. But IJsselhoog is nowhere near full.
A few years back, there were briefly concerns that the island may never be full, as most toxic areas had already been cleared up, and the rate of pollution from Dutch and German factories is so much lower than it used to be. So that's a nice
Really?
outcome. Though it probably annoyed the aqueduct at the Rijkswaterstaat, whose calculations had been thwarted. And never underestimate the wrath of a water nerd scorned, because instead of just leaving it as is, they shrank the size of the container so that it would fill up more quickly.
For the sake of this video, I actually contacted the
Why?
Rijkswaterstaat directly, and they told me that they expect IJsselhoog to be filled in about 7 to 8 years, and that following the shrinking of the container, there's still about 6 million cubic meters of space left in there. So it's it's going to be a while.
You
Once
think
IJsselhoog
I don't
fills
know.
up, then the real fun begins. Decantation. The water will be left for a time to let all the gross sediment sink to the bottom, like pulp in an unshaken glass of orange juice. This is helped by the structure's contained,
What a
sunken
great
nature,
metaphor.
protecting it from tides, currents, and inclement weather. Once that's done, the quote-unquote clean water at the top will be siphoned off and sanitized using a filtration process before being sent back into Ketelmeer. The contaminated sludge will then be treated by facilities on the island, which will separate the pollutants from the silt. The contaminants will be shoved back in the well and permanently sealed with layers of clay and sand, forever consigning them to the IJsselhoog. But get this, the separated and now clean silt will be used to create more artificial marshland-covered islands nearby.
Oh my
as bird
God!
habitat. To see a snapshot of what this might look like, just take a closer look at IJsselhoog. This little island off its southeastern coast is called Hanzeplat, and was created from the silt that was excavated from the initial creation of IJsselhoog, and
Oh
it's
my
currently
God.
a thriving bird sanctuary. Furthermore,
No
the
way.
middle of the eye will then be covered over in silt, and IJsselhoog will be turned into a little island that might be used for recreation or power generation or other fun stuff the government
Oh.
hasn't said yet. It's all very
Wow.
cool and very Dutch, and we're all very jealous of their big brains.
Absolutely,
The design of this
yes.
thing means that leaks and flooding are not a concern. The bottom of the tank is lined with piles of extremely thick, impenetrable clay, while the walls are lined with foil, I assume not kitchen foil, but something a bit more industrial grade.
Just like,
Furthermore,
what
to
kind of
avoid
foil?
flooding, the water is kept 4 meters below the level of the surrounding lake, which is lower than the actual lake bed.
Okay.
And the circular dike that forms the perimeter of the eye is 10 meters tall, despite not looking like that at all. So whatever goes into the IJsselhoog doesn't come out unless we want it to. IJsselhoog is an example of a municipal cleanup project done right. Polluted silt
Yes.
is a widespread issue across the globe, but the Dutch being the Dutch, they did the prerequisite maths and took
They
a
did it
punt on what
perfectly.
seemed a pretty weird idea, and then the world watched as they once again conquered a common problem with a highly uncommon solution. The IJsselhoog
Yes.
is a genuinely masterful piece of engineering, and is a perfect demonstration of the Dutch modus operandi of engineering their way out of a corner.
From the
Yes.
beachgoers in Ketelmeer who are looking to avoid wading through toxic sludge on their day out, to birds looking for a nice habitat, to the government who might have ended up with a pretty hefty engineering bill had they tackled this problem incorrectly, IJsselhoog is just a win-win for everyone.
It is.
Except for me, because I'm so cold! Oh my god! My hands are going to fall off.
Whoop, this place is beautiful. Okay, so it was I like it's like it wasn't creepy at all. It was like no, it's perfect. So it was man made because I was thinking yes, like I said earlier, I was like yes, but it's weird that not that nature like he also mentioned like nature does create some pretty weird shapes, but something perfectly circular like I don't think that exists. In nature around nature itself. So it is funny that it was like no, of course it's artificial, and because something so perfect, like so perfectly circular. Once you see it, it's like the actual island. It's like no, of course it's gonna be man-made because it's so artificially made. It's so perfect that again, it was a little bit like I was imagining again, like to use the cookie cutter thing because it is perfectly circular. But it is incredible. Yeah, just looking at it visually, it looks so beautiful, like appealing. It's like, okay, it looks very weird. It does look a little bit out of place, again, because it stands out because it's so perfectly, like, I don't know, like the shape is so perfect that you can see, okay, this is man-made. What is this for? Like, once I saw it, I was like, no, it's gotta be for something because it's surrounded by other areas that are sort of like normal looking. So it's like, okay, so what's the point of this? And I would have never imagined, not even in like my wildest dreams and thoughts, that it would be, yes, it's a toxic sludge. It's sort of like a huge not water tank, it's a tank. It's like, wait, what? It's incredible that the Dutch people in general, like, it's like, yes, there's a problem. And they're gonna, like he said, like over-engineering. I don't know if it's over-engineering, but it's incredible that that's what they did. Like the perfect solution they came up with was this. It's like, okay, so what you mean to tell me is like, oh, we have a problem. Like there's a lot of like toxic sludge and there's like a lot of residue and we have to like fix this. And what do you mean? Like the first place your mind goes is like, okay, well, let's just like create an island for it. It's like, what? What do you mean? Like that's crazy. How do they come up with these ideas? I'm pretty sure like I would love, who came up with this? Probably wasn't just one person. It was like a team of people that came up with it. It wasn't just one guy being like, I have an idea actually. It's like, no, I don't think it's like that. But again, it's like the minds of the Dutch people, like it's like their brains should be studied for science because it's like what? It's crazy that they come up with these things. It's like actually I'm surprised by the fact that it took them like that short amount of time to actually complete it. I think it was like in the early 90s, like it was I think over like less than 10 years or around 10 years. I think it was much less. So it's like, okay, in less than 10 years or around 10 years, you were able to build this, which I think it's crazy. They didn't actually mention how much money they spent, but would love to know how much money and effort they put into this, in effort as in like man-made, people, workforce and people working on this thing. And again, and like the money situation, because it looks expensive as well. So it's like, okay, again, it's like, it's worth it at the end of the day. I don't think the government cares about like spending that amount of money because again, it's like they're creating jobs. So great. And also like the result is going to be, it's a good investment, but I would love to know how expensive it was because it looks expensive. But it's like something that it's not a little like I'm thinking. Obviously, they know like they're the engineers. They're the ones with experience. I have no idea about this area. But it's weird to me that they're like, well, yeah, they put it like their calculations were like we're gonna need like a tank this big in order to fill like this amount of sludge and water and stuff. And it's like, oh no, we sort of like miscalculated because then we have like less waste, so it's like the thing's not gonna be filled. But it's like, okay, why? And then they have to like, they're like, no, we're gonna seal it out like up to a certain point. But he's like, okay, why wouldn't you just like leave it? Like I would leave it forever because it's like, well, great. Like according to my calculations, like it's not gonna be filled in 10 years. It's gonna be filled in, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years. Wouldn't that be good? It's like, well, yes, it's gonna take longer. So good, I would think that's a good thing because I would be concerned. They're like, no, because again, they have plans for it, which again, great. It doesn't end here. Like they're not gonna leave that tank there. No, they're then gonna seal it out. And then they're gonna like clean that water and all the sediments are gonna be left out. It's like, okay, like this whole thing. And then they're gonna create like more islands that are gonna be good for like the animals and for especially like birds and probably other fauna. But it's like, okay, it's kind of crazy that they're like, no, wait, like we miscalculated the thing. And it's gonna be like, it's gonna take like that amount of time to actually fill it out. So we're just gonna shut it before. It's like, no, why would you do that? I'd be so scared of us like filling this thing and then down the line in 20 years, 15 years, people are like, oh no, like now we need it, now there's more waste, so like we shouldn't have closed that thing. Maybe that would be my number one concern, but obviously I am aware that they know what they're doing. So if they know what they're doing, like they know they have to do this, like no, it's gonna be better like that. But what's gonna happen after like they seal it shut? Like what's gonna happen with all the sludge? Because all that sludge, I'm imagining, like even if it's sludge and you were expecting like it's pure materials, like it's still gonna be like still like, I don't know, because I don't know what kind of like sludge we were talking about, but I'm guessing like it's still gonna be produced. Like that's not gonna change, even though there's efforts to actually like make the whole thing like, and I know the Netherlands in particular, it's like a very green country, and they do make a lot of effort to actually like reduce that waste, but there's still gonna be some of it. So it's like, what are you gonna do afterwards, after you seal it shut? And you still have like factories nearby and other places that produce this. Like I'm so curious to actually like know, because again, I know what they're doing, but it's like, okay, would love to know like how it evolves, because actually he said like it's gonna take, I think 5 or 7 years for like the thing, for when it actually they shut it down. Well, not shut it down, they shut they seal it shut. So it's like, okay, we'd love to know how it progresses down the line. Actually, I love that like a lot of like these Dutch projects are very like long term, and not long term in like 5 years or even 7 years. Like no, long term as in like 10, 20 years. I love the fact that it's like it's never ending. Like the whole thing is just constantly evolving. It's like, it's great. Again, their minds should be studied, because this was incredible. Again, a huge solution. Like when you're seeing it like from at first like glance, you're like, why would you need to do all of this just to reduce sludge? But it's like, no, you know, you can see the logic behind it. It works perfectly. And again, like it's going to improve the whole situation. And actually it's not going to just improve that situation, it's actually going to create better things. So it's like, you know, especially like for the animals and stuff. So it's like, okay, so it's like we should all be doing this. Like we should all be like following Dutch people in this. And I'm wondering how come other countries don't follow along. Maybe it's maybe lack of resources. Like again, I'm thinking it's very expensive, so probably not all countries have the monetary like capacity to actually take on like this sort of projects. And maybe Dutch people can, because maybe it's like a smaller country that is probably like earns, you know, they have like, it's a rich country with fewer like it's small. So I think it's like probably the perfect country for this sort of like things to get done. Because again, it's like small but rich. So maybe that's one of the things. But maybe other smaller countries that also like have a lot of money, maybe they should like follow along this, you know, the Dutch people. And I don't know why they're not doing that actually. That was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.